All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I am really excited to be here. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to chat with you all. It has been a great day at the summit for day one. I know we are getting closer and closer to happy hour, so I'll try to make this brief but hopefully insightful for you all. Just give me a second here. There we go. So my name is Carrie Coos. I'm Senior Product Marketing Manager at Blackboard, and prior to joining Blackboard and the world of ed tech, I worked for digital marketing agencies here in Denver and in Austin, and I am local here to Denver. But more importantly, the content that you came for, my Aussies. So, to tell you a little bit about how Blackboard developed a new narrative for online learning, I first want to quickly talk about who Blackboard is. So we are predominantly known for our learning management system, Blackboard Learn. You may have even used this learning management system or something similar when you were in school or even at your companies today. We also have over 60 products and services. We have recently merged with a company called Anthology, so now we are serving over 150 million users in 80 countries, making us the largest ed tech ecosystem. And today we're going to talk about relationships, and more specifically, bad relationships. So buckle up. So we've all experienced bad relationships, be it our own or train wrecks in pop culture. Maybe it's relationships we thought were really great and then they ended up pushing us off a door when there was room on the door, things like that. But chances are you've probably experienced that relationship of a friend where it is just absolutely awful and they can't see it. And you've maybe had to help raise the flag on this. And these really bad relationships do call for an intervention. So for product marketers, narrative design can be a lot like a relationship intervention. We are showing our audience the bad relationship that they are in, and we are teaching them how to break up with that status quo or that old model, and helping them find a better life with this new game that we are illustrating for them. So for those who are unfamiliar, narrative design is actually a game development term, and in the most watered down version, I could say you can think of it as sort of similar to world building. It is establishing rules for the universe of the game you're playing in. However, Marcus Andrews, who is very much a leading voice in product marketing, he took this term to apply to marketing, and even more specifically product marketing. And so we're going to talk about how to use narrative design in building your story for your company. So when we talk about narrative design, it's important to note that it is not product positioning. These are different things. And so where product positioning focuses on the buyer's problems and why your product is the best solution, narrative design, on the other hand, looks at a change in the world and how that change impacts the buyer's behavior. So think of it as a more zoomed out view of your audience and how they fit within the world. In a world like SaaS, tech, there are thousands of companies who are competing for market share. So showing why your product is the best solution is not really enough anymore. You actually have to build a world and a story that makes your audience realize there is something wrong with the current model or the status quo, and really establish how awful that pain is so that they are faced to make a choice on continuing with that old and painful way or moving on to the new game, which will improve their life. So, hailing a taxi, it sucks. Never have cash on hand, don't know how to get a driver, don't know when they're available. It's an experience that is full of friction. With Uber or Lyft or these other ride shares apps, I can reserve a ride, track my driver, share my status with friends and family. I can pay everything from my phone. And it's important to note that Uber didn't set out to create another taxi company that serves you in black cars instead of yellow cars. They actually changed the way people hired private drivers for direct transportation. And we all remember those nostalgic Friday nights browsing the aisles of the video store. But we might probably all agree that it is actually more fun and relaxing to stream our favorite TV shows right from our couch. But even before they became a leading streaming service, Netflix didn't try to be just another DVD rental option. They didn't try to compete with Blockbuster by claiming to have better selection or longer rental periods or lower prices. What they did was they said, we get it, you are busy. And when it comes to wanting to watch a DVD, you don't have to go out to the Blockbuster, to that brick and mortar place, go find the DVD, come home. You should just have that delivered directly to your doorstep. And we are going to do that for you. And then we have the story of inbound. So advertising has long interrupted our lives, right, to the point where we now just tune it out. And so Seth Godin came in and said, okay, what if instead of just shouting and screaming at our audience, we actually got their permission? We started to provide things of value to them enough for them to start trusting us. And HubSpot built on this permission marketing concept with inbound, and they said, okay, let's actually deliver this valuable content, let's bring leads into your website, and in exchange, they start to trust you, and they continue to lean on you as they make decisions for their purchases throughout this buying cycle. And then inbound doesn't stop there. We get that inbound is really hard, so what we're going to do is provide you a way to do it all in one place. So you have SEO and blogging and a CRM and lead nurturing and emails. All of these things come together in HubSpot. So they offered this solution in addition to telling you why the old way was wrong and there is a new way. We can see this with companies like Drift, conversational marketing. That's another good example. So on March 9th of 2020, Product Marketing Alliance published this article by Marcus Andrews called Why Narrative Design Will Replace Product Positioning in 2020. As a fan of PMA and Marcus, I read it right away, and I remember thinking, yeah, this sounds cool. Sounds actually really awesome, and I got very excited about it, loved the concept, loved the idea, but then I remembered that I worked for an enterprise corporation that is, we're education technology, so we primarily serve the higher education industry and market, so if you are familiar, that's a lot of inertia among those things. So how do I make any type of change? Where do I even begin? Well, then on March 11th, 2020, the World Health Organization declared COVID a pandemic, and 2 days later, a national emergency is declared in the US. Lockdowns, mask mandates, toilet paper shortages, Tiger King. Our reality as we knew it was forever changed. And so I want to give you a quick look at what March 2020 looked like for my company, Blackboard. So as I mentioned, the LMS is our flagship product, learning management system. So obviously, we had a massive shift to remote learning. We saw a massive increase in users of our virtual classroom, Blackboard Collaborate, massive increase in daily logins to our LMS. But what's also interesting to note is we had a 55% increase in our community membership. We had over 17,000 registrations for educator webinars on best practices for online teaching, as well as increased formats of our Ally, which is our accessibility software, and huge increase in mobile app downloads. And what I want to point out here is that without changing anything about our products, the world changed around us. And all of this happened because our users were faced with a change in their lives and needed to act on those changes. So we all have an opportunity. The change is happening around us. It's up to us to do something with it. So I want to just take a quick show of hands if what your company sold was directly affected by COVID-19, like using Blackboard as an example with learning management software. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of hands, yeah. Now I want you to think if you were personally affected by COVID-19 and something changed. You started working from home, you started teaching your kids from home, you started ordering grocery delivery, anything. Who felt a change? Like pretty much everybody, yes, okay. And so COVID-19 had this immeasurable impact on education, but it did across the world. And some of these changes were temporary, but a lot of them actually transformed our perspectives and expectations enough for us to reevaluate these old habits and make some changes. So, there's never been a better time to break up with old ways, old models, or the status quo that's no longer serving us, and our customers are making those same evaluations. So we want to talk about how to bring this breakup conversation to your audience. So I wish I could have planned it for us to have ice cream available out there. The granola bars are great though. More on brand for us. With narrative design, Marcus Andrews actually developed a 5-step framework that you can use to create this new narrative for your audience. These 5 steps can work for B2C, B2B, whatever SaaS, tech, whatever widget that you are selling. I'm going to walk you through how we did this. We utilized this framework at Blackboard, and hopefully you can walk away with some ideas of your own. So, step number 1 is to identify a change in the world. So we've already established that a really freaking big change happened that affected everyone in this room and likely everyone outside of this room, everyone that we are trying to market and sell to. So if you are having trouble identifying a change, that's a great place to start. Just think about how the last 2 years and the changes that have happened, how they affected your buyer. For ed tech, this change looked a lot like a massive shift to remote learning. We got $14 billion an emergency relief fund from the CARES Act in the US. Those were that's money in the hands of our buyers looking to spend money on technology. We also saw the greatest decline in enrollment in secondary education than the country has ever seen. And users' preferences are shifting with a shifting landscape. So for the online program market, we actually saw in the 5 years leading up to the pandemic an increase by 1.5 million additional students enrolled in exclusively online programs. Then, of course, a massive acceleration when it comes to 2020. And now this online program management market is actually expected to reach $13.3 billion in just a few years. So what is the change that we identified? Well, the demand for online learning has increased, and it's increased massively and accelerated in 2020. But it wasn't just the need for remote learning options, but the demand for a learning experience that fits the lives of students, which is no longer about living on campus and learning in giant lecture halls. Today's students view their education experience as consumers with options, much like they would view Amazon. They want personalized, flexible experiences that can deliver value, and if they can't find that, they will go somewhere else. And it may not be an institution. So we said, what is our old game and what is our new game? For higher ed, this looked like the traditional learning models were to say 18 to 22-year-olds on campus, you graduate from high school, you go to college, you are a full-time student, maybe you get some support from your family. But the truth is, over 80% of students in America today do not fit that mold. They are first-generation students, they are parents, they are working full-time, they are going back to school in their 30s and 40s or starting school for the first time in their getting to middle age. So they look a lot different, and what they want out of learning looks a lot different. So takeaways for your first step are, what does this change mean for your story? As I said, think about the last 2 years, how this change has impacted your buyers. And this is where all of that conversation from the start of the morning about knowing your persona, I love, she said, know your persona like you would a friend. This is where that comes into play, is to be able to understand how that impacts them, not just at a business level, but how does it impact them on a personal level, because our lives are so mixed and a personal change is going to impact how we do our business. So step 2, illustrate how this change impacts your audience. This is about talking about why should they care. In the case of Blackboard, our buyers are the institutions, and their pool of students is shrinking. It's an incredibly competitive market right now, even for the most selective of schools. So having a strong portfolio of online degree or online programs is key to staying relevant. And so we had to look at this and say, okay, today online learning is now really, really normal. If you remember, it wasn't too long ago that it was stigmatized. It was a subpar, less than, maybe your degree wasn't actually worth anything, could it be trusted? And that also meant that schools didn't have the money to invest in these programs. So they needed someone to help them get these things off the ground. And that's where these things called online program managers, or OPMs, came into play. They basically said, we will front the investment for you, we will help give you resources and expertise to start online programs, have this proof of concept so you can expand. All you have to do is give us half of your tuition revenue over the course of 10 years. No big deal. That's very wrong. But taking that cost component off the table made it easier for schools to adopt. Of course, as I mentioned, taking half of a school's revenue over the course of 10 years isn't a really great model. It is for the OPMs. They make a lot of money. But today, that proof of concept for online learning is no longer necessary. Schools don't need that investment. What they need is a strategic partner to help them differentiate and scale those programs. So that means that this model is very outdated and doesn't actually solve the enrollment problem that our buyer is facing. This is a quote from a dean of a business school. And I love it because I think a lot of us could sit here and say this about something. I'm not giving you 50% of my revenue if I don't need all of your services. I need to be able to select the services I need on an a la carte basis and pay you a fee. I think, we probably said that to cable. We're saying that to things like gym memberships, anything that is a large, one-size-fits-all, pay for everything but only use the thing that works for you. we are leaving behind, and in favor of more personalized programs that fit our specific needs. And so I think this can apply to so many industries. So we did a lot of research. This goes along with that knowing your persona really well. We did a lot of research in the market and with our clients to get feedback on the concerns around working with an OPM. And it all really came down to themes of mistrust and lack of communicated value. So again, we came back and we said, okay, what's our old game and our new game? Who are the winners and losers in this, and how do we illustrate this to our audience really well? So the old game is the revenue share OPMs, and I know that's a really over-the-top image, but that is intentional. But those who stay with the revenue share model, they are going to continue hemorrhaging dollars to these private companies, and these are their students' dollars. They're going to continue being, losing money there while their leads are getting sold off to their competition, and they will just kind of blend in and all look the same, and they're going to lose students. On the other hand, the new game, the winners, they're going to move on from that, and they're going to adopt an unbundled or fee-for-service model that gives them, they only have to pay for what they need, and they see value, they get ROI, and in turn they can invest in growing more programs. So the takeaways for step 2 really come down to do your research, and I think that's a theme we've been hearing all day is around research and really understanding your audience, talk to customers, get a really good idea about what their concerns are with the status quo, and then paint a really clear picture of who the winners and losers are. Social proof is an extremely powerful tool in convincing people to join a side, right? Like use FOMO to your favor so that they want to join the thing that you're doing. Step 3. How do we adapt to that change? How can they make sure these effects are minimized? What is the thing they need to do? So we employed an inbound marketing strategy to help educate our audience on the big choice they had to make. Higher ed happens online, and they could either stick with the status quo, or they could make their lives better with the new game. So there are a lot of content here that is a lot of like, here's what you should consider, here is a checklist, here is a comparison between the models, not ever actually talking about Blackboard specifically, but just the different schools of thought. And we wanted to really enable our internal teams as well, along with the outside content we were putting out about the differences, and make the comparison between this old game and our new game really, really distinct. And we continued to take that across the 4 kind of key pillars we learned from our research around that trust and transparency and value. And then here, this is like a really dumbed down example for you, but we still would use actual data from clients that moved over into our programs and moved from this model to say, like, you could be losing this much money, and our deal sizes, that is in, $3 million is not an exaggeration for the money. And creating that data comparison really opens the eyes of buyers. So for this step, you want to make sure you are illustrating a very clear fork in the road, and make them understand that this change that's happening in the world requires a choice from them. And so you want to create this really clear picture of that fork or that crossroads, again saying, stick with the status quo or this old model, but that is going to be full of friction and frustration and maybe even failure. Or you can we invite you to join us over here on the path of the new game that's going to make your life easier, and you're going to achieve your goals. Step 4, identify why that change is so hard to adopt. And this, I love this step because this is all about relating to your audience. And this is the we get it moment for your company to really empathize with them. So going back to that research, we tried to identify that why do institutions, even though they know it is not the best way, why do they stay in these OPM relationships, these very long contracts where they're losing half of their revenue? And the most common responses we got were, like any bad or toxic relationship, well, what happens next? What do I do without this person, and what does my future look like? And that's going to be one of the biggest hurdles, is convincing your audience not just that the old game is bad, but the new game is much better, and it's worth the work or the risk it will take to get there. So if every story had a villain, the OPM, this old way, was our villain. And we knew we had to create a narrative that called out the problems with this toxic relationship. So we really leaned into this breakup theme, and we said, okay, well, we want to get our audience to break up with their OPM, but instead of saying that old breakup cliche, it's not you, it's me, we said we want to put the blame where the blame is due. So we said, to our audience, it's not you, it's them. And this was actually really powerful for people because it was important that they knew what they were doing wasn't wrong. They were trying to help students learn in ways that worked with them online, and that's a really great thing. Like, getting accessibility to learning is what we're all about. But having a company take upwards of 50 to 60% of your students' tuition dollars for very not transparent business practices, well, that's actually really wrong. And so we want to put the blame there. So we did lean into this. We said, okay, it's going to be hard for you to leave this old game, so we're going to actually provide you step by step how to do it. And this included case studies and panels and roundtables. We got clients helping to spread this word that actually talked through the process that they went through in breaking up with their OPM, leaving these contracts, and how they realized independence and freedom and success with this new game. So the takeaways for this step, they're actually pretty simple. Be empathetic. No one likes to be told that a big change that they have to make is going to be simple when it's not. We want to hear stories of how other people did it so that we can actually believe and start to see ourselves in that and see that we can have that success too. And then don't be afraid to be bold. We made the OPMs our villains. We said, we're going to lean into this breakup theme. And it was a little risky because, again, higher ed can be an industry that takes itself a little too seriously sometimes. But we decided, it was worth the risk. Maybe, it's a little cheeky. We could grab some attention. And the feedback we got was actually that it was really that of relief, that this has been an incredibly intense time for higher education, and just the ability to just laugh at the thought of having ice cream after you break up with a vendor, made them really happy. So don't be afraid to have a little fun with it. Step 5, this is the last step in the framework. Show them what you've built to help. So this is where you solidify in your audience's mind that your solution is the best solution in moving on after their breakup. So in the inbound marketing narrative, as mentioned earlier, this is HubSpot, the all-in-one software to help you do all of the elements of inbound really well. For us, that was OPX, online program experience, building on the experience messages that we had woven throughout our narrative in the previous step. We said, here is the answer, our suite of technology and services to help you develop and deliver quality programs, ROI, scalability, all that. And we really tried to emphasize the path to sustainable growth, and using this through all of our internal enablement, but also our external messaging and assets. And we wanted to make sure that we said, once you break up with your OPM and you move away from this toxic relationship, we're going to help you have more than a rebound. And that's where this message of sustainable growth kept coming in, because again, going back to that fear of, well, what happens next? You don't just want to have a rebound and then you're stuck again in that same place. So we wanted to demonstrate initial, results that, like in this case, the first 18-month results. But then we wanted to go through and say, we're going to have ongoing optimization, and so showing that we are going to, drive continued growth despite a difficult market. We are going to convert those leads into enrollments. And then that in turn allows for launch of new programs and continued growth. And this is actual example from one of our clients over a 6-year course of working with them. And so we actually then mirrored our marketing assets after the actual growth trajectory of our clients, which also reinforced this message of this path to sustainable growth. So we painted this picture of negativity that comes with the old game and the long-term value that can be gained when you move to the new game. We've shown them that they have to make a change, but that change, while difficult, they have a partner who's ready to help them through that. And they're gonna, that partner is gonna give you the tools you need to make it happen. So we said, here are the keys. You're now empowered to make that change a reality for you. So for you guys, give your audience more than a rebound. Demonstrate how you will be there for them in the long run, how you will be there, what is great to help back that up. Again, using data, using social proof, whether that's testimonies or just getting your clients to be your evangelists for you, and then long-term plans and sustainability. And ultimately, you just want to build confidence in your solution as the best option. So with anything product marketing, the story doesn't stop with you. You have to make sure that the story is effective by making sure when you hand it off to your field teams, sales, demand gen, everyone, that they can also tell this story, and that you will be telling the story so well that your customers and your market is telling this story. And when we set out to create our narrative, we looked around and we said, well, everyone sounds the same. So we said, let's set a few ground rules before we get started in building this narrative, and so that we aren't just sounding like everyone else in the market by using words like transformative power of education, but that we actually have data to align with what we're doing. So first, we wanted to keep quality and performance at the center of our story. We wanted to use data to demonstrate how we drive better outcomes, not just say that we would. And it's amazing, that sounds really simple, but if you start to look around at websites, it's amazing how many people just actually make claims with nothing to back it up. So second, like any good copywriter, you want to show and not tell. And we wanted to paint a picture where our audience could see themselves in our story. And lastly, we wanted to generate genuine emotion. And for us, we have buyers who are at the executive leadership level at an institution, but ultimately our users are faculty and students. And so we started putting their voices front and center to really get into that heart of what the decision our buyers were making around education. And so you see this again is that 5-step framework, except I've replaced it with the key messages that we mapped to align with every step, so that at each step, whatever piece of content or campaign that our field teams were making, whatever it was, could really align with this full narrative. We then went and said, taking those themes, how do we map that through the funnel or the flywheel, if that's your pick? And then we made messaging matrix that really mapped this across every theme. And we said, if enrollment growth is the theme, what is the statement that we use? How do we back that up? And what is with a value statement? And then what is the data proof point that goes to support that? And you can see that everything here then maps back to those original messages from the funnel, which maps back to our framework. And then we also took it and said, okay, not only looking at messaging themes, but also our different segments in our audiences. So we had 4-year public schools, we have 2-year community colleges, HBCU, continuing studies, and for each of them, they had different priorities for what was going to be the key message that got them in the heart or in the head, depending on the role. And then, again, our narrative wouldn't have worked if we did not socialize it out across our organization. And we found that investing in developing what we called enablement kits really made this dissemination of information, but this repeatable story possible, so that no matter if they were writing an email campaign or there was a sales pitch, whatever it was across anyone in the organization, they could tell this story really well. And investing in these resources, not only help to drive our asset usage and ensure a consistent story, but it can also help improve other areas of the business. Helping with sales confidence, helping with faster speed to close or higher win and adoption rates. There are a lot of areas that you can start to, or levers you can start to pull by making sure your teams are enabled with the right content. So final takeaways here. Identify your old and new game. Map that out to the 5-step framework. Create compelling messaging for each step. Make it ridiculously simple for your teams to adopt, and continue reevaluating and reassessing to make sure that this message is resonating with your audience, that other stories that might be coming up because of other changes happening, that you are weaving those in and keeping those considered in everything that you're telling your audience. So it has been a pleasure. I really want to stay connected with you guys on the community. So looking forward to seeing you guys on Slack or on the trails for those of you who are local. And I think if there's time for questions,
we actually are a little over time, so we're not going to do questions. But if you do have questions for Carrie, I encourage you to chat with her at the happy hour afterwards or connect with her on Slack. So round of applause for Carrie.